Hello and welcome to this knowledge tutorial looking at question 3 paper 2, the explain the importance of. This is a 16 mark question which is actually 2 8 mark questions. You'll get a choice of 3 topics. They'll all ask you to explain the importance of an event during the Cold War, typically with regards to relations between the USA and the USSR, or it could be regarding an impact on something, but keep the focus on explaining the importance. So for this one, we're going to focus on the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. And here we've got the question, and I've taken this from the exam board, and they said the target is to focus on consequence and significance. So if I just get that there, as you can see there, consequence and significance is importance. And obviously we've still got knowledge understanding is evident, and we can see that half the marks are given over to explanation and half the marks are given over to knowledge understanding. And you can see it's 2 times 8 marks. So basically for each one you're talking 4 and 4 for that, and we times it by 2 to get the 16. Typically per response you should be looking at 12 minutes, and that gives you the opportunity for 2 6-minute paragraphs. Okay, so mark scheme wise it's really straightforward. Simplified generalized comments, limited development of the information. You're going to be getting into level 1. Again, limited knowledge to back that up. You'll get the top end of the level 1, but you're not going to get any significant marks. Level 2, you give an explanation, but it shows an attempt to analyze it. So you're going to say it's important, and you might kind of suggest a reason why, but you're not really delving into enough depth on that explanation. And that's why it says here that sometimes the passages may lack coherence and organization. Accurate information has to be applied to get level 2, showing some knowledge and understanding of the period. And obviously level 3 means that a solid explanation is given. It shows analysis of the importance, so you're going back to that importance as a focus, and it's logically structured. Accurate relevant information is included. Good knowledge this time and understanding is required. So the idea with this kind of question, my plan would be, I'd think, right, what's the importance of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan? Well, it led to the end of détente. It led to the Carter Doctrine as a response to that. You could argue it led to the Second Cold War. So I would choose 2 of those elements there. Now then, let's have a bit of a knowledge focus on Afghanistan. There is another vodcast on Afghanistan on the channel. It's actually on one of the playlists, but short version of it is there was a communist revolution in Afghanistan headed by a guy called Amin. Now there was resistance to it because trying to invoke communism in a very Muslim state that Afghanistan was, there was a lot of resistance from religious leaders and the traditional tribal leaders in Afghanistan. And Amin, whilst wanting Soviet assistance, also wanted better relations with the United States. Now, this posed a problem for Brezhnev. Brezhnev had a couple of issues here. He wanted to ensure that Muslims within the Soviet Union didn't resist. He was very concerned about fundamentalism. He was also concerned about Amin's support or desires for getting US assistance. So, using a treaty that had been made in the past, he sent Soviet troops in to support the government. That was the reason he gave. However, the reality was that Amin was killed. He was replaced by a puppet called Kemal, who was really reliant on the Soviets to keep power. And that explained why the Soviet Union would be in Afghanistan. And they were in Afghanistan for approximately about 10 years. So when we have a look at the consequences, we can see a number of factors here at work. First was the Carter Doctrine. Now, Jimmy Carter wasn't particularly seen as a strong Cold War president, but he was quite tough. He was massively concerned that the Soviet Union might try to expand further south towards the oil-rich nations in the Middle East or threaten the Middle East, the Persian Gulf, where America got lots of its oil from, and that would massively concern America because it required oil for its economic welfare. So he said, basically, I'm going to ramp up military spending. I'd want a rapid reaction force to deal with issues like this, so we can go in and stop the Soviet Union from pushing against other nations. And he also said the CIA could do more intelligence gathering. And later on from that, you saw the CIA also support the Mujahideen, the Afghan rebel fighters. Another factor was it ended détente. The SALT II treaty, which had been agreed upon, needed to be ratified, and the American government said that's gone. And it really showed the end of détente. There was, the idea of a easing of tensions was now gone completely. And that, you could argue, led to the next point, which is the Second Cold War. This is where you see the kind of Cold War start up again under the presidency of Ronald Reagan. And he sees it as a kind of moral crusade. The final events were the Olympics. In 1980, the Moscow Olympics were based, the Olympics were based in Moscow, and the Americans and a number of other nations, not Britain, boycotted the Olympics there. As a response to that, strangely enough, the Americans had it 4 years later in Los Angeles, and so the Soviet Union and a whole heap of Eastern European countries also boycotted the Olympics there. So it's like a tit for tat, and it was focusing on the issue of like propaganda. So looking at that, what are the exam board wanting you to do? For each paragraph, I would look at the following. Firstly, identify a reason for the importance. What focus area are you going to draw upon? Give detail to that. In sentence 2 and 3, give examples of this. Add really specific details if you can. Sentence 4, possibly even sentence 5, explain why it was important. Really try to go through and think, how does this explain the importance on US-Soviet relations? We're not telling the story. It's how did that affect US-Soviet relations, or whatever the focus area of that question is. And you need to then repeat that in a second paragraph with a new focus area. So I've got examples for this one. So here I'm going to just narrate this. It says, one importance of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan was it led to the end of détente. The policy of détente had been in operation between the Soviet Union and the US since the late 1960s. However, when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in December 1979, it led to the collapse in relations, with the US calling off the SALT II treaty. This can be seen to be important in relation to US-Soviet relations, as the invasion of Afghanistan can be seen to herald the end of détente, as the US felt that the Soviets had broken from their aim of détente and instead were wanting to further spread communism. This can therefore be seen to lead to the Second Cold War. Now then, you might have a look at this and you think, right, other vodcasts, we've broken this down, we've reviewed it, and of course we have. So here we've got our point, we've got our detail, and we've got our explanation. How does it refer back to that question? If you want to pause it, have a look at it, you can do, but really straightforward. That would be hitting into the level 3. I've made a point, I've backed it up with specific details, looking at the SALT II treaty. I've not just said, oh, there was a SALT II treaty. I've said what it was. If I wanted to take it further, I could say what the SALT II treaty was about, i.e. reducing intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs. I could mention that, and that would add to that detail, adding to that kind of specific nature. Here's a second paragraph, and it says, another reason why the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan was important was because it led to the Carter Doctrine. This was when the US President Jimmy Carter stated that the Americans would respond if the USSR made any further moves towards the oil-rich states to the south of Afghanistan. It further led to an increase in military spending and the CIA support for Afghan rebels. This can be seen to be important in terms of US-Soviet relations because it showed that the Cold War heated up again, and there was a tougher line being held by the US. This can be shown by the election of Ronald Reagan, who was a great deal tougher on the Soviet Union. And again, here I've got my point, I've got my evidence here, specific detail, what the Carter Doctrine was, talking about increasing military spending and the CIA backing for rebels, and then I've explained how did it lead to a change in the relationship between US and Soviet Union. Okay, hope this has been useful. If you have any queries or comments, any concerns about it, please feel free to comment. Thank you for listening, and good night and good revising.